Welcome everyone to this brown bag session. It's really wonderful to have Tan Sri Wahid, my good friend, joining us. And he and I share something in common. We both worked for government-linked companies before. And in the case of Maybank, he was with UEM and also with telecom. And secondly, we also became federal ministers at the time. We were colleagues at that time. It was wonderful to have him with me as a colleague. And thirdly, we both joined a band called the CEO Band. He is our bassist and I played the lead guitar, and we had tremendous fun doing all that. But more importantly, today, we're going to learn a lot of things from him. He's sharing with us. We consider Tan Sri Wahid one of the best people that we can learn about purposeful leadership. So hopefully today we'll pick up a lot of gems and insight from him in the course of the hour or so. And that's all I want to say. Thank you very much, Wahid, for coming, joining us today. It's a great pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato Sri, for your opening remarks. A very good morning to everyone in the audience. My name is Seri, and I will be your host for this morning. Moving on to the main event for this morning, it is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for today, Dato Sri Abdul Wahid Omar, who is going to share with us on the topic for today's Brown Bag session number 4, Purposeful Leadership, Lessons Learned in Transforming UEM, TM, Maybank, and more. It is a topic I'm sure many of us are very interested in, as it is a rare opportunity to be able to hear firsthand from the man who has led many successful corporate transformations in not just one organization, but more than 5 organizations that Tan Sri has led or is leading. His credentials are impressive. He landed his first role as CEO at the age of just 37 years old at UEM and has since moved on to lead many large corporations such as TM, Maybank, PNB, and now as the chairman of Bursa Malaysia and UKM. He also served as the minister in the Prime Minister's Department, where he oversaw a number of government agencies, including the Economic Planning Unit, EPU, and Talent Corp. Tan Sri's impressive work has been recognized globally, and he has received numerous prestigious awards, including Malaysia's CEO of the Year Award 2006 by Business Times and the Asian Banker Leadership Achievement Award for Malaysia in 2013. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Tan Sri to deliver his sharing for today. Over to you, Tan Sri.
Well, thank you, Sirin. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And a very good morning. Well, thank you, Sirin, for that very kind introduction. And thank you, Dato Sri Idris Jala and colleagues at PEMANDU Associates for inviting me. I remember 4 months ago, Dato Sri Idris Jala sent me a text message asking me whether I could join this session. And naturally, having been former colleagues before and being the band leader, so to speak, I couldn't have said no to him. So I said yes, and 4 months later, here we are today. Now, understand that you had the benefit of Tan Sri Azman Mokhtar, Dato Sri Nazir Razak, and Tan Sri Tony Fernandez before me. So I'm afraid I may not be as colorful as Tan Sri Tony Fernandez, but I will try to do my best in the hour plus also given to me. So what I thought I would do, if I may just share my screen, please. Sorry. Thank you. So what I thought I would do is to spend about 40 minutes or so to do this presentation so that at the end of it, we can engage in a Q&A session. And please feel free to ask me any question that you may have. So I would like to do this presentation in 3 parts. First, I will share with you my personal journey and the lessons learned in transforming the various organizations that I had gone through. Secondly, some quick remarks in terms of what are the things you need to do in order to prepare your organization for longevity. Meaning that you want to make sure that after your departure, your organization will continue to prosper. And third is to talk a little bit about the COVID-19 challenges, because I think given where we are today, I don't think we could not say anything about COVID-19 and how we're dealing with it, if I may. Now, starting with my career journey, I was born back in 1964 in Johor Bahru into a family, a big family. I was number 9 in a family of 11 siblings, and life was very tough when we were young. But I was fortunate that there was the new economic policy. There was aim at taking people out of poverty, and in particular by giving them good education. So I had the benefit of going to MRSM Seremban, a boarding school, with great teachers, great working or studying environment, and later given the opportunity to be sponsored by MARA to pursue professional accountancy in the UK. Came back in 1987 as a chartered accountant. Obviously, my ambition was to be the chief financial officer of a large listed company. And Alhamdulillah, I achieved that when I was appointed as the chief financial officer of Telecom Malaysia back in March 2001. And to me, that was it. I did not wish to do anything else. But I never expected to be given that opportunity to be CEO at the UEM Group, and then later at Telecom Malaysia, Maybank. And I had wanted to retire at Maybank, but I was invited by the Prime Minister then to join the cabinet. And as someone who had the benefit of government scholarship, I felt compelled to do national service. And I said yes, but I only volunteered to serve for one term of 3 years. And after which I requested to go back to the corporate sector and becoming the chairman of PMB. And until 3 years ago. And then I had always wanted to do something in education. And 3 years ago, I was appointed as the chairman of UKM, chairman of the board of directors of UKM, and did what I could within that period of time. And my tenure is up at the end of this month. And after which I will continue to focus on my role at Bursa Malaysia, back into the corporate sector where I think I can add most value. Now, of all the career over the past 30 years, I would say that the most, I have been privileged to have led 4 major organizations. And for each one, it was actually with a clear purpose. So for example, when it came to UEM Group, there was an appointment which I did not expect at all. But at that point in time, UEM Group had just been taken over by Khazanah. And as part of the efforts to rehabilitate the group, they had expanded too fast and had incurred too big a debt. So at the very peak, UEM Group had more than 30 billion ringgit in terms of debt, and it was not sustainable. And they were loss making and so on. So the mission that I had then was actually to turn around the group and to address the corporate governance overhang that was overshadowing the entire capital market, to protect national assets from falling into foreign hands, because UEM Group was owning quite a number of infrastructure assets, including the highways, the LRT systems, and so on. And also to save some 24,000 jobs that we had then in the group, and to prevent some of the banks from incurring losses, because some of the banks had more than 1 billion ringgit exposure to the group each, and you don't want that to have negative implications on the financial system. After completing my role at UEM Group, I was then asked to go back to Telecom Malaysia in order to transform Telecom Malaysia to be a regional telco. And the idea would be to create that regional champion and to fly that mission flag. So Alhamdulillah, we were able to actually grow into Indonesia, Singapore. We strengthened our position in Bangladesh and in Cambodia, as well as Sri Lanka. And by that time, by the end of 2007, Telecom Malaysia was established as a regional telco with particular emphasis on mobile communications. And then the decision was made to actually split Telecom Malaysia into 2. And we demerged Axiata to be the mobile company, and we refocused Telecom Malaysia to undertake the development of the high-speed broadband in Malaysia in partnership with the government. So that was completed in 2008. And as I was executing the demerger exercise, I was then approached by the Maybank board to join them and succeed Tan Sri Amisham, who was at that point in time about to retire. And the mandate then was to transform Maybank to be a regional banking group and a global leader in Islamic finance. And to me, as someone who had been experienced in growing two businesses before, I felt this was a big challenge that I would like to take on. And after that, I spoke about being invited into the cabinet for 3 years, then came back to rejoin the corporate sector by being the group chairman of PMB. And the mandate then was to build PMB to be a distinctive world-class investment house. Why distinctive? Because PMB is the only unit trust management company that operates a fixed price unit trust fund. So it's a simple model in the sense that when times are good, we don't pay all the dividends, we keep some reserves that will cover in years when the performance is actually, when the market is actually not so good. So that among this is our model. World-class because we do benchmark ourselves against the best fund managers in the world in terms of investment methodology, in terms of risk management, and in terms of asset allocation, and of course in terms of investment performance too. Unfortunately, we were actually in the midst of executing, and we were able to achieve some incredible outcome. And then the change in government happened, and there's what Dato just mentioned earlier. So there were some changes that happened, but I guess we then move on, if I may. So in the 33 years of my career, I would say that the most impactful and purposeful experience I had must be at Maybank. Now, when I joined Maybank on 1st of May, Maybank had just finalized 3 major acquisitions, banks in Vietnam, Indonesia, and Pakistan. And many investors did not appreciate the high valuation paid by Maybank. Now, beyond that, there were actually 3 major challenges that I had to face. One was to follow through on the 3 major acquisitions, costing some 11 billion ringgit, and to raise the necessary equity and debt capital required to fund those acquisitions. Secondly, was to deal with the global financial crisis that was unfolding at that point in time. And many of you will remember that by September 2008, many international financial institutions had collapsed. This included people like Lehman Brothers, ABN AMRO, and even Citigroup almost collapsed, and they had to be rescued by the Federal Reserve. And I remember getting that phone call from the CEO of Citibank in Malaysia, asking Maybank for help to put some money on standby to meet the huge withdrawals that they were experiencing at their Penang branch. Now, you know that in any financial crisis, when you have a bank run, the idea is actually to make sure that you have enough liquidity, enough cash to meet whatever withdrawal they want to make. Because the moment you say, sorry, we have run out of cash, you end up with having more people coming to the branch. So the challenge to me then was to make sure that whatever was being experienced by Citibank will not spread to the other banks. So we make sure that everything's actually managed well. So alhamdulillah, we were able to do that. But the third real challenge, which was actually very deep, was in respect of the underlying financial performance of Maybank. Now, Maybank had been the #1 bank in Malaysia for more than 10 years at that point in time. And every year, Maybank would be reporting record profits year in, year out. So, but when we started to actually analyze the details, obviously we then realized that Maybank was growing by only 5% per annum in terms of profit, assets, and financing. when the other competitors, CIMB and Public Bank and even RHB, were growing by 20% per annum. So what that meant was that if nothing was done, and if the trend were to continue, within 2 years, Maybank would have been overtaken by CIMB and Public Bank and would have been relegated to number 3. And indeed, the investment committee had already come up to that conclusion, because in terms of market capitalization, by March 2009, the market cap of CIMB and Public Bank had gone above Maybank, and Maybank was relegated to the number 3 bank. So when we shared this with the people, obviously, Maybankers wouldn't want that to happen, and that's how we responded. Now, I still remember in my first year in office at Maybank, we had some 24 board meetings. And if you can imagine, 24 board meetings means that it's actually almost one every fortnight. So those of you would know, as management members, how tough it is to prepare for the board meeting and how alert you need to be at the board meeting itself to answer all the questions. And after that, you need to execute the decision of the board. So it was actually very taxing, but we had no choice but to do it. And a lot of the meetings were also related to the major acquisitions, and in particular, the acquisition of the bank in Indonesia, BRI. So what we had to do then was to navigate through that acquisition and make sure that we are able to secure a reduction in the price that had already been agreed earlier. Because if we had proceeded with the acquisition at the original price, Maybank would have impaired 2 billion ringgit in that investment. And that would have resulted in Maybank reporting loss. And that's something which we can't afford to do, where in a global financial crisis situation, you have the biggest bank reporting loss, that will erode the confidence in the financial system. So that's why we negotiated very hard. And Alhamdulillah, we were able to actually navigate and manage to actually get that 1 billion ringgit reduction in price. And with that, although we had to impair 1 billion ringgit, but BRI, or Maybank Indonesia, as now is known, is a major part of the Maybank regional strategy. Now, back to the underlying performance. So we had a town hall with all the senior leaders of Maybank. At the point in time, it was the top 300 people, and we showed them the numbers. And at that point in time, we resolved that we do not want to be number 3 bank, and we did it to fight. So that's when we came up with a performance improvement program called LEAP 30. It's a series of 30 initiatives that have been identified to improve Maybank's performance and to restore its market leadership. So these are the simple things like, how do you stimulate sales? How do you optimize your cost? How do you improve customer service by, for example, reducing the average waiting time? Before that, it was about 20 minutes. Then we actually brought it down to 5 minutes average waiting time at the branches for the customers. How do you increase the share of wallet for corporate clients, for example, the IT system, the processes, and so on. And it needed to be implemented really fast. So, I mean, to PEMANDU's concept of big, fast results, so BFR, that was actually something that we embraced at that point in time. We were actually very focused about who needs to do what, by when, and what's the intended outcome, and if you're not achieving that, what will be the adjustments and so on. So after 18 months of working very hard on all those initiatives, Alhamdulillah, we found that our assets and deposits grew faster, our customer service was enhanced, our asset quality improved, and our profit after tax bounced back to a record 3.8 billion ringgit for the financial year 2010. And Maybank was then back as the #1 bank in Malaysia and the most valuable company listed on Bursa Malaysia. Now, alhamdulillah, we were happy with that achievement, but we were really worried about its sustainability. Why? in order to achieve that kind of outcome within that 18 months period to execute the 30 initiatives, we all had to work very hard. And I'm talking about the 12 to 16 hours a day. Most of the time, our management meeting would be held after dinner because we were running out of time during the day due to various work and initiatives. So we would have our simple dinner, either pizza or Big Mac or Burger King, and then we have our meeting till about 11-ish. And I would say that 50% of the time, you could still find people like me in the office beyond midnight. We had no choice because we had committed not to be the bottleneck. So whatever decisions that came to our office, we want to clear the memos and so on, so that by the following morning, the people had all the decision for them to execute. So the point is that, yes, we could do it for 6 months, 1 year, and 18 months, but there's no way we could have continued because professional fatigue was setting in. So that's when we said, look, yes, it was great that we had achieved all this, but in order to make it sustainable, we need to do more than that. So we then gathered the top 1,000 leaders of Maybank at PICC, Putrajaya International Convention Center. So that's probably the only place which is big enough to hold 1,000 people in a brainstorming kind of session. And alhamdulillah, that was actually when we agreed to revisit our mission, the mission of humanizing financial services. And what does it mean? Well, it's about providing people with convenient access to financing. It's about providing our clients with fair terms and pricing. It's about advising our customers based on their needs rather than how much money we can make as a bank. And it's truly about being at the heart of the community, both people community and also the business community. We then simplified our organization structure by creating only 3 pillars of community financial services or retail financing, if you like, global banking, and insurance and takaful, with international operations and Islamic financial services cutting across all 3 pillars and supported by very strong operations support. And so with that, we simplified the processes, we avoided all the workarounds, and making sure that there's a lot of single accountability, less duplication, and certainly less over interdependence, so that decisions can be made faster and so on. And alhamdulillah, with that, we then found that it was easy to work. We did not have to spend too much time in the office. And the same outcome was being able to be achieved without having to spend too much time in the office. And by that time, people like me, for example, were able, I did not have to work beyond midnight anymore. Typical hours would be starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, and by Maghrib time, just before 8, we would have completed all our work, perform Maghrib, and after that, I could either go home and have dinner with the family, or go out and have dinner with clients and so on. So life was much more pleasant and more sustainable. So with that, alhamdulillah, Maybank continued to extend its leadership as the #1 bank in Malaysia, and one of the top regional banking groups with presence across all the 10 countries in ASEAN. So I thought I would share with you this chart to demonstrate the progress in terms of profit after tax and after minority interest. This is the period between 2002 and 2008, when I spoke about the 5% growth per annum compared to public bank in red and CIMB. CIMB was the darling at that point in time. You can see how they had ramped up their profit. And by 2009, they have more or less overtaken Maybank. Now, this was the year when Maybank made that profit of 700 million ringgit after having to impair 2 billion ringgit. So 1 billion ringgit of investments in Indonesia and 1 billion ringgit because of the investment in Pakistan. But that's actually a one-off item. So if you were to add back that 2 billion ringgit to the 700 million ringgit that was actually reported. So the normalized profit would have been about 2.7 billion ringgit. So that's actually about the time when CIMB and Maybank was about to overtake Maybank. But with the performance improvement program, our profit rebounded to 3.8 billion ringgit in 2010, 4.4 billion ringgit in 2011, then 5.6 billion ringgit in 2012, and by 2013, it had gone up to 6.4 billion ringgit. And you can see the gap between Maybank and CIMB and Public Bank had widened significantly by the time I left. And alhamdulillah, so that effort continued after my departure with Dato Farid and team leading Maybank and continued their leadership. And based on 2019 figures, you can see again the gap being maintained with the other two competitors. And of course, in 2020, all banks got hit because of the COVID-19, but the gap is still significant. So again, what I'd like to emphasize here is that it's not just about numbers per se, but if you address all the fundamentals and you go back to fulfilling your purpose, you ensure the sustainability of your organization. So that's in terms of financial performance. Now, another area where we applied purposeful leadership is how we grew Islamic banking business in Maybank. Now, this was very much a personal and a strategic issue too. Personal because when I moved from Telecom Malaysia to Maybank as a Muslim, some of my family members were asking, why do you want to move from a halal business to a riba-based business? And that's something which has struck me. And after I discussed with our team members at Maybank, we then said, look, okay, perhaps what we can do is to come up with a mission of growing Islamic banking business in Maybank, such that one day, hopefully, the majority of the financing business in Maybank would be Sharia compliant. So we were very much inspired by the simple concept of the supermarket. So if you were to go to the Tesco supermarket in London, there's one at Brompton Road in London, near Knightsbridge there. So that's the photo here we share. You find that they have the halal meat section, where you have chicken, lamb, and so on. And the rest of the supermarket is not necessarily halal, no guarantee, right? But if you were to go to the same Tesco supermarket, but in Malaysia, it's actually the reverse. So you have that pork section and the wine section, but the rest of the supermarket is halal. So in the past, if you were to walk into a Maybank branch, it's a conventional branch, conventional bank with a small Islamic finance window. So what we did was we inverted it. When you walk into any Maybank branch, automatically you'll be given or offered Sharia compliant or Islamic banking products without you even asking. But if you request for conventional product, then you can actually go to the small part of the branch that will do the commercial banking. So with that, so what we did was basically we embraced the Islamic first strategy, which is very much in line with Malaysia's vision to become an international Islamic financial center. And it gives us the opportunity to be not a regional leader, but a global leader when it comes to Islamic finance. And with that, Maybank's Islamic finance business actually grew very fast, such that today, Maybank Islamic is the largest Islamic bank in Malaysia. It is 3 times bigger than Bank Islam, the pioneer Islamic bank. And it is also the fifth largest Islamic bank in the world, at about $64 billion in terms of total assets. And it's also recognized as a global leader in Islamic finance, particularly when it comes to sukuk issuance, Islamic capital market, if you like. So alhamdulillah. So again, the point I wanted to make here is that if you anchor your work based on real purpose, and I think the outcome will be more pronounced, if I may. So what are the lessons learned, not just from Maybank, but also from the others, from Telecom Malaysia and from UEM? Well, I thought I would summarize it in 3 slides. The first one is in respect of lessons learned in corporate leadership and management. Firstly, you need to be clear on your mandate. You then perform a full diagnosis of the company, establish what are the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Yes, I'm talking about the SWOT analysis that we learned in school, 20, 30, 40 years ago. It was relevant then, and I'm afraid it's still relevant today. Simple methodology, but it works. The third is you need to match the task required with the management talent internally before you bring in reinforcements to fill in the gap. Now, my approach has always been to go in alone. I do not bring an army of team with me and no preconceived ideas. So you talk to the people, you then assess what's actually needed, what the quality of the people you have inside. And once you have established the gap, then you bring in reinforcements, not go in with a full team and then removing all the people you have internally. So that will set you back a few years if you were to do that. And it's not fair to the people. Number 4 is about the need to revisit the vision and mission to ensure its continued relevance and articulate a clear purpose or reason for being, if you like. Do your scenario planning and be prepared for the worst in any crisis. Number 5 is about formulating strategies and action plans together with management team and to syndicate them with all the stakeholders, including your board, your shareholders, employees, regulators, and your business partners where relevant. 6 is about the need to communicate your plans and update them regularly with all levels of employees, even your clerks. You need to explain to them what you're doing and why you're doing it and so on, and what role can they play in that transformation journey. Number 7 is about the need to set clear and measurable short-term and long-term targets with clear timeline and accountability. So again, I'm a proponent of a balanced scorecard and a good performance management system, because if you don't measure them, you will not get done. Number 8 is about the need to align the interests of management with that of shareholders, especially for public listed companies. So naturally, you can look at your stock options or any long-term incentive plan that aligns the interests of the employees with the shareholders. And number 9 is perhaps something which a lot of people tend to forget about sharing the rewards with all levels of employees, because I know many corporates, what they tend to do is actually just to reward the top management and all the executives. The clerical staff, non-executive staff, they get the normal contractual bonus and so on. So it's wrong. So make sure that you reward everyone as best as you could, because every single person would have contributed to the performance of the company, if I may. So that's the first set of lessons learned. The second is in terms of management principles. Always focus on the fundamentals and don't worry about short-term market fluctuation. So especially for listed companies, it's very easy for people to be distracted and just to focus on the share price. Please don't, because the share price is the outcome of your underlying performance. How well do you treat your customers, and how with that you're able to grow your revenue, how you optimize your costs, and with that you improve your profit, and with higher profit you can pay more dividends. And with that, naturally, when your earnings per share goes up, your dividend per share goes up, and so will your PE multiple, and naturally your share price will take care of itself. So don't look at the share price on a daily basis. Ignore it. We saw that at the end of 2008 and early 2009, when the media was very much focused on market cap, always reminding us that Maybank is no more number 1, number 3, but we told our people, so don't be disheartened, focus on the fundamentals, and true enough, alhamdulillah, it worked. Number two is about adopting the best practices in corporate governance. I think it comes naturally. Address the core issue of customer service, product innovation, competitive optimal pricing, effective delivery channel, and profitable market share. It's okay to do loss leader in the interim initially, but make sure that you have a clear path towards turning that market share into profitability. Number four, this is very much Dato Sri Idris Jalah's favorite, the P&L. So be clear on the costs and benefits of every single venture, product, initiative, or plan. So every single one of them must be anchored on P&L. And beyond the four quadrants of corporate responsibility and sustainability, meaning, yes, you address the issue of sustainability at the workplace, marketplace, community, and the environment. For public listed companies, you need to make sure that there's shareholder value creation. So again, serve the customers well. With that, your business will improve. You create more profit, you pay higher dividends, and better share price in the medium to long term. Don't overspin. Some of my friends, they would go in, the first thing they would do would be to address the branding. Wrong. So I think you should address the fundamentals first. And once you have achieved fundamental improvements, then you can complement it with branding or rebranding, as the case may be. And as we say, form without substance will not get you anywhere. But when you combine fundamental improvements with a good form or branding, then you will go a long way. And that applies to personal branding too, if I may. The third set of lessons learned will be on personal leadership skills and attributes. Now, a good leader must have a very clear purpose, be visionary, articulate, authentic, engaging, and must have unquestionable integrity. Now, you don't have to be that typical loud corporate leader to be effective. In fact, in some Malaysian organizations or Asian organizations, being too loud, too aggressive can be counterproductive. So you need someone who's actually, yes, very affirmative, but not necessarily too loud. Now, gone are the days when the CEO can just sit from the corporate floor and just tell people what to do. Today, from my perspective, especially in large organizations, CEOs are expected to be more hands-on and to provide that appropriate guidance, not just on what needs to be done, but also how things can be done. So lead the way, if I may, and walk the floor. Number four is about the need to be professional, honest, sincere, and being truthful to your board, your management colleagues, and to the employees. And please don't be afraid to say sorry, because we are, after all, human beings. We make mistakes. What is more important is actually for all of us to learn from our mistakes and not to repeat them. And the last part is about the need to truly focus on the task at hand and to do well, and not to worry about your next career move. Because sometimes some people, they tend to plan, okay, I want to do this for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and so on. And then they end up not getting anywhere because they forgot about focusing on the current task at hand. So you may have noticed that I've served in many organizations, but the truth is I only applied for only 2 jobs throughout my career. So that's actually the first one at KPMG when I got back from UK. And the second one, after finding that auditing wasn't my cup of tea, I then wanted to be an investment banker. So that's when I applied to work at Bursa Malaysia Bankers. So those were the only 2 jobs that I applied for. The rest was very much by invitation, so based on reputation. So again, focus on your task at hand, do it well. I think inshallah, God willing, your reputation will precede you. So those are the 3 sets of lessons learned, which I hope you find useful. Now, for many CEOs, they take pride in how the company is performing well while they were there. But after they depart, if the company doesn't do well, then obviously that's actually the fault of the following leader and so on. But I tend to look at it more holistically. To me, it is very important for the CEO to prepare that organization for longevity. So meaning that that company should continue to prosper beyond your departure. So to me, this is where I talk about organizational sustainability. Normally I would share with people 8 aspects of it, but I think for today, I'll just focus on the top 3, if I may. One is actually they need to select the right leader for our respective organization. Beyond working hard and working smart, to me, there are 3 prerequisites to be a good, effective, and sustainable leader. So it's about integrity, competence, and humility. Integrity, as you know, is about doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. In simple words, it's about not cheating, don't steal, don't lie, don't take or give bribes, both at the personal level and at the organizational level. Competence, as you know, is about having the right knowledge and skills to do the job well. And it's also about the need to continuously learn and upgrade your skills and knowledge, because no one would know everything. So you will have one set of core competencies, but you then need to acquire new competencies along the way, if I may. And the third one is probably the least spoken about. It's about humility. Now, humility is about treating people with mutual respect. It's about staying grounded to your roots. It's about being cognizant that we all live in this world for a greater purpose in life rather than for our self-interest. And humility is also about knowing that we don't know everything and we need teamwork in order to succeed. So to me, someone who's humble, competent leader with unquestionable integrity and works very hard will be successful, and again, will enjoy a reputation that will precede him. The second one is about the need to have proper succession planning and talent development program. So this should cover all the key positions, not just CEO -1, but also for CEO -2, 3 for large organizations. And for each position to identify 3 potential candidates and to ascertain their level of readiness, whether they're ready now, within 2 years, or 3 to 5 years. And what would be the intervention required to prepare them to succeed in the incumbent. So maybe they need additional skills, decision-making skills, or communication skills, or they need exposure to run a business. So for example, you may want to send your CFO to run a certain division that's got a P&L accountability, for example. So that will prepare him well to come back and become a CEO later. Now, I also believe in the need to strike the right balance between growing your own timber, so to speak, internal talent, and bringing in talent from outside. Now, for some organizations, they would profess of only growing their own talent. The problem with that is that if you keep on people from only your organization, after 3 decades or 4 decades, you will find that that organization will be at risk to becoming insular, because they will then start to think that they are always the best and so on, because they don't have the benefit of external inputs. At the same time, there are also some organizations that don't have a proper internal development program, and they will always hire people from outside. So that's going to be very disruptive and no continuity. My view is that you need to actually balance both. As a simple rule of thumb, again, based on my own personal experience, generally it's good to have 75% to 80% of the time that you promote your internal people, and 20 to 25% to bring in talent from outside. So that means actually your organization will be solid, a lot of continuity, a lot of internal capabilities being built, but at the same time avoid that being kata bawah tempurung, being insular, and you have the benefit of external input, refresh in that organization. So that's a general rule of thumb for me. Number 3 is the need to truly embrace diversity as a source of strength. for any organization. Now, people often talk about diversity in terms of gender, but it must go beyond that. So diversity in terms of skills, ethnicity, age, and even nationality for multinational organizations. So in the case of Maybank, for example, naturally, Maybank has got people from Indonesia, from Singapore, Philippines, being part of the management team because it is an ASEAN original leader, if I may. And for me, organizations that embrace diversity, they would tend to perform better and more sustainably. And when it comes to gender diversity, I believe that most PLCs are growingly meeting that goals. So we now have about, I think, 18% to 20% of the board members in the PLCs from among the female gender, which is not good enough. We need to go up to 30%. But I'm not worried because actually the trend is there. And certainly in the mission context, we have women already leading national institutions, Bank Negara, PIDM, POP, and others, proving that there is no glass ceiling for women in Malaysia, although we still have some work to do. But beyond gender, I think the time has come for such diversity to be broadened further to cover ethnic and age diversity, and not just at the board level, but also at the management level. And speaking of diversity, I thought I would also highlight this issue of affinity to prejudice continuum. Now, this is probably uncomfortable for some people to talk about, and is probably not in any textbook or management books. But I thought it's important for us to actually put it on the table. Now, as human beings, it is only natural for all of us to have affinity towards people from the same school, same university, same profession, same state, same clan, same ethnicity, same religion, and same nationality. Very natural. But it is important for us to be conscious that we don't allow such feelings of affinity to overcome us, such that it will become favoritism. And if you don't control it further, it will become cronyism. And at the very extreme, it will become prejudicial to the interests of the other people. Now, I have worked in an organization where half of the management team were from one school, right? And of course, when I asked them, how come that's actually the case? They said, oh, it's based on merits. I would then say, excuse me, how is it possible that a school that produces only 150 students a year can make up half of your senior management team? So naturally, there's element of favoritism and cronyism there. Likewise, there are also some organizations where when the CEO is actually from one state, and suddenly you have 1/3 of the people coming from the same state. I'm not talking about the state corporation, right? So that's different. So that's it for the purpose. So naturally, if you have an organization with a purpose to promote economic development, let's say in Terengganu or Kelantan or Johor, so naturally you expect majority of the staff there to be from that state, again, fulfilling that purpose. But my view is actually, if you look at your management team, and if the composition of your management team is grossly disproportionate to the stated purpose or the environment that you operate in, chances are there are some elements of favoritism or even cronyism at play. So always be mindful of that. So put it on the table, look at the diversity of your team, and if a big number of them would come from the same university as you, or same school, or same ethnicity or region, then you have to make the necessary adjustments accordingly. Again, it is natural to have affinity, but make sure you are able to contain them. Thank you. So that's some 3 thoughts on organizational sustainability. So I guess for any talk that happens today, it will not be complete if you don't talk about the COVID-19. Now, I must say that throughout my 30 years career, I had gone through 3 major crises. The Asian financial crisis, 97-98, the global financial crisis of 2008, and the financial market turbulence in August 2015. But I would say that those crises pale in comparison to the state that to the current pandemic that we have here. Now, obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic is totally unprecedented. It is having global impact that's piercing through economies, corporations, and individuals alike. So the lockdown imposed in most countries had resulted in global GDP to decline by 2.2%. Malaysia obviously was also affected, with our GDP contracting by 5.6%. Similarly, Singapore contracted by 5.4%, Indonesia 2.1%, Thailand 6.1%, and Philippines suffered the most, where their GDP contracted by 9.5%. It is a threat to lives and livelihood. More than 4.9 million deaths from 240 million cases globally, and of course in Malaysia, we had 28,000 deaths from 2.4 million cases. And the impact on livelihood is even more damaging, with unemployment rate increasing to 4.8% in June before moderating to 4.6%. But that's still some 770,000 people still unemployed. And that does not include people who are underemployed. So we saw the impact on household income declining by 11.3% in 2020, and poverty incidence rate increasing from 5.6% to 8.4% in 2020. So that means actually we still have some 640,000 households living below the poverty line income of 2,208 ringgit. So I'm glad that government is spending as much as possible to help people and to also help boost the economy. So we've seen 8 rounds of economic stimulus packages of 530 billion ringgit, 83 billion in direct fiscal injection. Of course, that results in wider fiscal deficit of 6.8% to 7% this year, compared to 6% last year. But I think that's unavoidable in order to make sure there's no permanent damage to the economy. I think we had the huge budget last year, and we can expect the same, expansionary budget to be announced next Friday. And the other would be to truly to keep businesses afloat and to keep as many people employed as possible. And I'm hopeful that with the reopening of the economy in this quarter, so hopefully we should be able to achieve the upper end of the 4%, or the 3 to 4% range forecast by Bank Negara in terms of GDP for 2021. And as you know, under the 12th Malaysia Plan, the target is actually between 4.5% to 5%. My view is actually, as long as you are able to reopen the economy and you help businesses to stay afloat and grow, and I think inshallah those targets can be achievable. So that's on COVID-19. So I know I have only 3 minutes left. And that brings me to this last slide on my final thoughts on leadership and sustainability. So if I may summarize, firstly, to be a sustainable leader, you must believe in purpose, do good, and God willing, inshallah, you will gain barakah. Secondly, they need to embrace the 3 key attributes of being a good and effective leader. Remember, integrity, competence, and humility. Number 3, there's no shortcut to success. You need to work hard and work smart. Some people say that you don't have to work hard because just work smart. But I'm afraid there are so many people who are smarter than you are. Then what makes the difference will be when you put in that extra hours, extra effort, you combine it with good planning, then inshallah you'll become successful. Don't stop learning and use technology to your advantage. We are fortunate because we have a wealth of information available at our fingertips today. Number 5 is about you need to focus on your task at hand, do it well, and inshallah you'll be successful and your reputation will precede you. Number 6 is about, again, the need to emphasize on the fundamentals to focus on substance rather than form. Remember, a form without substance will not get you anywhere. But if you combine fundamental improvements with a good form or branding, then you will go a long way. Number 7 is about the need to keep innovating, think outside the box, or blue ocean in coming up with solutions. Number 8 is about the need to keep up with technology and to embrace sustainability. Sustainability is a big thing today, and it will be for the next many years. So I think companies that ignore ESG will not be sustainable because they're not going to get the debt funding or active funding to fund their project. They will have to pay a huge premium for their unsustainable project. They will not get staff wanting to work for them, and they will find difficulties to sell their products because consumers now are more discerning to buy only sustainable products. And certainly, you will not be able to partake in the global supply chain because everyone will have to make sure that they embrace sustainability throughout their supply and value chain. Number 9 is the need to keep fit and to stay healthy. If you're not healthy, I'm afraid you're not going to be effective or useful to your organization, and in fact, you'll be a liability to your family. So I can say that because I'm learning from my own experience. So I did not look after my health when during the early part of my career. So I'm paying for it in some ways today. But I will encourage all young people to make sure that you watch your diet, not just the quantity, but the timing of the food and the type of food. Make sure that you set aside some time for exercising and make sure that you find some time to manage your stress as well. The last one is about the need to be grateful, to be helpful, and to be pleasant in your dealings, because sometimes we forget to be grateful to the Almighty for all His blessings. Sometimes we forget to say thank you to the people who have helped us, our bosses, our parents, our teachers, and our colleagues who have helped us in our work along the journey. And be helpful to people, be present, because no one would want to work with someone who's not pleasant if they can help it. So when you are pleasant, you're helpful, you'll find that other people will want to help you to be successful, inshallah. So with that, I thank you for your attention. I'll be happy to answer any question that you may have. Thank you. Over to you, Seri. Thank you.
Thank you, Tan Sri, so much for such an informative session. Many good and helpful points that were given that cuts across various areas from corporate leadership and organizational sustainability. And also Tan Sri for touching on a little bit about post-COVID-19 challenges and about the need. And indeed, there's a lot to do for Malaysia to actually recover from the impact from the COVID-19. So there are many burning questions from the audience. So we will move on to the next part of this the Q&A segment of this brown bag session. I will pass on to Ian, my colleague Ian, to take over from here. Ian, over to you.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Serene. Good morning, Tan Sri. Thank you for the very insightful session. We really do appreciate the sharing that you've done with us so far. As Serene has mentioned, we're currently at the Q&A segment of this series. So perhaps we can take some questions coming in from the audience. To kickstart this session, Tan Sri, we have a question from Mr. Eric Hu, the Executive Director of Top Club. Mr. Eric, if I can request you turn on your mic as well as your video to present your question.
Don't be shy, Eric.
Hello. Hey, sorry, I had some. Thank you, Ian. Yeah, very good morning, Tan Sri.
Morning.
Yeah.
Morning.
Although in your earlier remark, you mentioned that you might not be colorful as compared to Tan Sri Tony Fernandez, but in fact, actually, you have actually a very colorful, a brilliant and excellent achievement in your career transformation journey, from a UEM, TM to Maybank, and then a minister in charge of economic planning, and also followed by a chairman of a PMB, UKM, and also Bursa Malaysia now. You have actually also touched on the 3 challenges at the Maybank, especially in executing the Lead 30 initiative, to transform Maybank. So beside a Maybank experience, maybe can you also share with us other most challenging tasks? And on the other side, maybe also other most fulfilling tasks you've actually encountered throughout your career path. Thank you, Lasri.
Well, thank you, Eric. Great to see someone from Top Glove. Just had a session with the board 2 days ago. 3 days ago, actually. Well, apart from Maybank, one of the most challenging tasks I had was obviously when I was at the UEM Group, because that was actually my first job as a CEO, and leading a large infrastructure development group with 11 public listed companies under UEM Group at the time. It was truly challenging. Trying to deal with not just the overall business, but the huge debt burden, and 30 billion ringgit at that point in time, interest rate was running at about 8% per annum. So you're talking about interest servicing of 2.4 billion ringgit per annum, 200 million ringgit interest servicing per month. Okay, I don't think anyone, any company at that point in time would have been able to sustain that kind of debt burden. So the biggest challenge as a first-time CEO, big group, huge problem, I had to come up with a solution as soon as possible. But alhamdulillah, we found the solution in the form of the biggest, the most valuable asset that we have in the group then was the Plus Highway. So what we needed to do was to repackage the highway concession to make it more attractive and listable. And we had like 1 year to actually get it listed, to renegotiate the concession agreement with the government and so on. Alhamdulillah, we were able to do that with the support from everyone, because everyone wanted to make sure that UEM Group did not collapse. So when we renegotiated with the government agreed for us to reduce the toll rate, but be compensated by lengthening the concession period. The government agreed to gazette the toll rate increases upfront, so that we don't have to go back to the cabinet every time we need to increase. So with that, we were able to reduce the toll rate from 5 to 6% increase per annum. So it was about 20 to 25% increase every 4 years or so. And we increased the toll rate by 10% every 3 years. So meaning average about 3.3% per annum, which is very much in line with inflation. So more receptive to the and it was then listable. So alhamdulillah, we started working on it in October 2001. We were able to get Plus listed by July 2002. So again, it was an incredible period, hard work, but we had no choice but to do it. But again, with all the collective effort of everyone, we were able to achieve it. So alhamdulillah. I was also fortunate because UEM Group was a private organization, so they were very professional. So I could rely on all the heads of the subsidiaries to run their own shop properly. Yes, I was serving on the board on some of them, but I did not have to be bogged down by the day-to-day running of the business because they were running it well. So we agreed at a point in time, okay, I will focus on the corporate restructuring, and they will focus on running the operations. So again, that kind of teamwork actually worked very well. What's the most fulfilling? Well, I would say that in all the tasks, when you have that outcome, it was actually very, very fulfilling. And you get that sense of fulfillment whenever you meet with your former staff, right? Then they go up and approach you instead of running away from you. Right? So that makes me feel good. But I must say that one of the most fulfilling will also include when we had to deal with the halal status or haru status of PMB's investments. Now, if I may just a bit of background, investment in PMB or ESB and ASN, they have been deemed to be harus or permissible by the National Fatwa Council back in 2008. But there were two state fatwa committees that disagreed with that, Selangor and Penang. And their so what I had to do when I joined PMB was to actually address the views from these two states. So what we did was to review our investment portfolio. Then we really enhanced the effort to make it truly Sharia compliant. So what we did was we removed tobacco stocks from our portfolio. We represent our surplus funds to make sure that they only invested in Sharia compliant money market instruments. We shifted from conventional bonds to sukuk, and then we targeted to fully comply with the Sharia requirements, and we then represented to the fatwa committees of Selangor and Penang. And Alhamdulillah, by April and by August of the following year, 2017, we were able to actually convince them to come up with a new ruling to see that investment in ESB and ASN is actually harus. So because that serves the purpose of many of the Muslim investors, especially in Klang Valley, because many of them live in Selangor, right? Because before that we were experiencing some withdrawal from some Muslims because of that ruling. So to me, from a religious perspective, that's also quite fulfilling for me. But having said that, I must say, in all the tasks, when you achieve a good outcome, it gives you a good feeling, and that's something that no one can take away from you. Thank you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Tan Sri. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Eric. Up next, actually, Tan Sri, we have a question from the audience, from Kang Son from the audience. Kang Son, if I can trouble you to turn on your mic as well as your video to present your questions, Tan Sri, please.
Hello, good morning, Tan Sri, Wahid. My name is Kang Soon. I have a question. Basically, I just set the scene first, right? I've always been using Maybank as my own benchmark for corporate strategy ever since you helped Maybank. And I guess you can guess which organization I was from. And there was a joke in my organization where the two CEOs, one is you and the other is my big boss, always uses the binoculars to look at each other and spy on each other as to what corporate strategy is all about. I think you may have heard this joke before. So coming back to this, I'm someone wishing to get back into the job market because I spent 1 year gap year to do my postgraduate during the COVID. However, I'm facing a lot of challenges getting back into the job market. So despite many attempts, I've used many sources, headhunters, writing it personally, JobStreet, all the portals. So I would like to ask, what advice will you give? What advice will you have to offer to me? Since I'm still passionate to contribute to corporate Malaysia, and the second one is a long shot. Any chance to request some form of mentorship from you? Thank you, Tan Sri.
Well, thank you, Kang Soon, for that kind words. So obviously, between me and Dato Sri Nazir, we enjoy very healthy competition at Maybank, and obviously we are very good friends now. So indeed, whenever I go back to Oxford for my visiting fellowship at the Oxford Center for Islamic Studies, he's normally there in Oxford too, and he would buy me lunch or vice versa, and so on. But back to your issue, naturally, the environment is actually tough for sure, because clearly a lot of people, a lot of organizations are suffering. They're not growing. So for people to get back to employment, it is tough. But having said that, as we enter 2022, I'm hopeful that with the reopening of the economy, with organizations having adapted to COVID-19 situation, I think there'll be demand for specific talents. So it depends on which area of competency that you have. I'm sure there will be organizations that will be requiring someone from from with your background, I suppose. But I would say that the tech sector is clearly the one that's actually most promising, and they will require some people from especially from banking groups, for example, who's got that broad knowledge in finance that can help them in their journey. So I think that's actually one area where I think there'll be great demand and so on. I had the benefit of visiting Aerodyne yesterday, for example. Met up with Kamarul Muhammad, who's the founder. So they're growing very fast. So they expect to hire, I think, 3,000 people over the next 3 years. And of course, many of them will be technical people. But of course, as business grow, they now operate in 35 countries. You can see the exponential demand for talent too. And I noticed that the talent include young people and also very senior people. So I can't tell your age, Kang Sun, but I think if you are below 55, you still have a chance, if I may. So again, don't give in. So do write in, connect with all your friends, acquaintances, to network, to look at opportunities.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you, Tan Sri.
Thank you, Kang Sun. Thank you for the answers, Tan Sri. Tan Sri, so up next, we have a question from a Mr. Omar Hazim, if I may read his question to you. He greets you, Salam Tan Sri. During your tenure as the EPU Minister, what is the hardest planning that you made to ensure that Malaysia will achieve high income nation under the TN50?
Well, thank you for that question. One of the reasons why I agreed to join the cabinet in June 2013 was because I actually believe in the new economic model. So that was the new economic model that was introduced back in 2010 with the three core elements of high income, inclusiveness, and sustainability. So actually very similar to what we have under the 12 Malaysia Plan, which is about prosperity, which is about a prosperous, inclusive, and sustainable Malaysia. Right? Now, to me, that was a really real calling, and I would like to be part of the team that will work towards achieving that. So unfortunately, we were doing a lot of good things, and on many parts we were progressing. So, for example, in terms of spreading the wealth, one measure that we used to measure was the cost of wages as a percentage of GDP. So before 2010, in 2009, for example, it was more like 29%. And we were able to actually to grow it gradually to 32%, 33%. And I think by 2016, they had grown to about 35%, I think. And today it's about 37%. And the idea would be to move it up to about 40%, which we reckon will be at optimal level. Because at that level, we are able to actually pay more for the people without making ourselves uncompetitive. So the US and UK, they're all above 50%. So there's too high a cost, but I think 40% is probably optimal. So Alhamdulillah, to us, we were able to do that. Sustainability, we're happy that the government then and today had continued to embrace that. And as you can vouch from the budget 2021, so sustainability has been embedded into the budget measures. And likewise, I think next week when the finance minister announced the budget, I'm sure sustainability will feature in a big way. So I guess we were all working towards that, and of course the setback was what happened with one NBB and so on. Right? So that's something which none of us actually expected to happen, but it did happen, and something which not many people know about it from the early days of 2009 and so on. So something which Dato Seri Idris and I was sad about, but I guess we'll let the law take its course and so on.
Thank you for the insightful answer, Tan Sri. So Tan Sri, unfortunately, we're at the end of the Q&A segment. And typically what we do like to do at the end of the Q&A segment is we present a question to both yourself, Tan Sri, as well as Dato Sri Idris. So for this question, Tan Sri, given your experience with the gig economy as an Uber driver previously, my question to the both yourself as well as Dato Sri Idris is, if ever you do take part in the gig economy, what role would you consider?
You want me to answer first or Dato Sri Idris
yes,
first?
Tan Sri, please, if you can have your answer first, Tan Sri.
Well, gosh, I guess, just to be clear, I had always wanted to try out being an Uber driver, even when I was a minister, but I was advised against it by SPAD because they don't want, because at that point in time, ride sharing was not legal yet. So after I completed my term as a senator and minister, I then quietly did that. It was meant to be a private affair, but unfortunately, one of the passengers uploaded the photo on the Facebook, and that became viral. So the idea then was actually to really understand how easy or difficult it is to earn a living through ride sharing and so on. So it was a concept that was good, and that's why the government then subsequently embraced it and legalized it. So I actually don't mind doing it again because I do appreciate the interaction with people. You meet a lot of people from various walks of life. I never realized that in Sabajaya, for example, there were so many foreigners. The majority of my passengers were foreigners, whether from India, China, even Thai nationals. Of course, I also enjoy, I use Airbnb a lot. And I look forward to other sharing platforms and try it out. Yeah, sure.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Very, very interesting. I think, as you mentioned, if being Uber driver would be a very pleasant opportunity to meet very, very different people with different backgrounds. Dato Sri Idris, if we may have your answer as well.
Yeah, I would like to do something related to something I'm passionate about. I mean, in terms of hobby, I would really like to join, if a blues band were to invite me to be part of the band, to do some gigs, not the whole time, but a couple of gigs, possibly like the ex-blues gang team, Julian Mokhtar, Ito, all these guys. That would be very nice. The other thing I would like to do would be put my hands really professionally, really learn how to really get into guitar making and start selling it via e-commerce and sell it via Amazon. And Reverb is the biggest market for selling guitars. So I've already done 11 guitars that I assembled on my own, but really, and I think put my hands really to do it properly. I think I could really get into the gig economy by doing that.
Excellent, Dato Sri. It seems you found your passion project. Thank you for your answers, Tan Sri Wahid and Dato Sri Idris.
Yeah. So Dato Sri Idris, if you need a bassist, please don't forget me. Okay?
So unfortunately, we're now at the end of our Q&A session. Do please accept our apologies if we weren't able to address all of the questions from the audience. As we're at the closing of our Brown Bag series episode for this round, I would like to invite Dr. Sri Idris to give his closing remarks. Dr. Sri
Great.
Idris?
If I may, Dr. Idris,
Yes.
maybe if I may request, now, I find that sometimes we Malaysians, we are too hard on ourselves. We tend to look at the grass as being greener on the other side. We tend to look at the glass as being half empty, as supposed to be half full. We tend to focus on things that divide us rather than things that unite us. So if I may request that, we all know that Malaysia is not perfect, but I can vouch that we are a lot better than many other countries.
Yeah.
So my request actually, if all of us were to do our respective part and be constructive in our approach and truly embrace the spirit and intention of Rukun Negara, I think inshallah, this country of ours can progress and be successful. I have no doubt that that can be achieved, but just do our part, be constructive, and embrace the spirit and intention of Rukun Negara, inshallah. So thank you so much for your attention, and I wish you all the best. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Tan Sri. Dr. Sri Idris?
Yeah, normally, thank you so much, Wahid, for sharing your experience. I consider your talk to be master me to summarize it. It's very difficult to summarize such a highly informative, insightful lecture that you gave. But fortunately, it's recorded. So I think most people who want to really get this, take some things that I really picked up. And the first point that you said is that in transformation in running successful businesses or organization, the starting point or all the activities. Once the purpose is clear in the experience that he shared earlier on, Tan Sri Wahid described his experience in Maybank, then they started to do the performance improvement programs that were anchored on the purpose that were prescribed, because they were very clear about the purpose. So therefore, they designed the performance improvement program on the purpose. And that was very important that they needed to do that. And the third thing that he shared in the Maybank experience was, as they went to implement all of those programs, they were working too hard in the first 18 months. So they had to start thinking about sustainability. So they then began this process of bringing the 1,000 people together to inject the sustainability initiatives. There were many that he described. It's very important that you get into doing that, because if you don't do that, you probably will run the organization into a burnout stage. And that's why it's important to bring a way, he calls it the humanizing the financial services was the term that they use, so that they're much more sustainable in the things that they were doing. They were not based on initiatives that were driven by task forces, but they were all part and parcel of the whole organization. Then the second thing that he shared with us were, I thought it was very helpful. They were very practical lessons, and he gave 3 sets of them. The first sets were to do with corporate leadership and management. He had altogether 9 practical actions activities that were subsumed under that. Then he came out with the thing that he described as management principles. And there were 6 of very practical actions that fell into that subset of practical activities that were put by him to do that. Let me now turn to the third lessons that I picked up, what I call gems. There were many of them, but I pick a few. And one was, he said, in the sense that purpose must be the driving force behind transformation. That is the starting point. That's a huge gem. The second one was, form over substance does not bring you anywhere. And so it's very important that the substance is what should drive the brand. the form. So you begin with putting the substance and then you bring in the brand to complement it rather than the other way around. And that's very important. And the third aspect, and it was important that he shared with us this, the importance of diversity. And he wants everybody to watch out for what he calls affinity prejudice trap, that we don't fall into the trap of being insidious and incestuous in our just becoming part of that tribe, and that we must be encompassing other people. And the last point that I thought was very important is a wake-up call to most of us. Focus on the work. Don't worry about the career, because the career will be driven by the nature of the work, the success that we do for our work. You know, so I think those are very helpful gems that I picked out in, and I hope that everyone today, we've been so blessed today, Wahid, that we pick up so much lessons learned. You gave us a crash course on MBA for purposeful leadership. So thank you very much. Have a nice weekend.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend, everyone. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
All right, thank you, Dato Sri, for beautifully summarizing the session for today. I hope all of you are as inspired as I am for listening to Tan Sri's sharing for today. And I'm certain that we will all leave today's session with greater knowledge that will be useful in our own journey ahead. With that, once again, thank you, Tan Sri, for your time this Saturday morning to share with us on such an impactful topic. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the end of our brown bag session for today. Many thanks to all of you in the audience for joining us, and be sure to join us for the upcoming series that we will be having on a monthly basis. We have an esteemed list of panelists for the upcoming sessions. If you would like to know more, scan the QR code, which is shown here, for all our social medias. And as always, stay safe, stay well, and have a good weekend ahead. Thank you and goodbye.